period from where we are now to Sandilo.
If you turn to Daniel 11 verse 40. Just paraphrasing the verse. Paraphrasing the verse. It says, at the time of the end, the king of the south shall push against him. The king of the north shall come against him as a whirlwind with chariots, horsemen, and ships. The standard understanding of this verse that we've taught in this movement for many years is still correct. What we've realized is that the second part of the verse, when the king of the north comes against the king of the south, that work is not accomplished, it's not finished yet. We understand from the earlier verses in Daniel 11 that there are two historical battles between 1989 and the Sunday Law. Most people understand those battles to be Raphia and Panium. If we were to look at the history of Pyrrhus, the names of those battles would be different. It's a different history. But we can overlay those histories one on top of the other. So we know that we're still in verse 40. There are many errors and outright lies that Future for America are teaching currently. One of them is the subject of dispensationalism. The last camp meeting we had in Sydney, all my presentations were dealing with that one subject. To show how Future for America manipulates information and lies. Unless you understand about how dispensations work, it becomes very difficult to answer a question like that. If we were to look at the agricultural line that we've spoken about a few times now, I think Brother Brendan has gone into this in some detail. But most people speak about this. The ploughing, former rain, latter rain, and harvest. We've spoken about this in our class. We also spoke about scalability. One person, a few people, the whole world. This is the subject of fractals. So when we start considering this agricultural cycle with fractals.
Ninda baka samataka na lesson yung go and ni baka sama ni daw-tay-tay na kinabinda-binday.
We just went to Luke chapter 10.
And ala ko na Luke was team.
We'd see that we're dealing with three groups:
Darega ninda kubuti ko ito na kumukum.
priests, Levites, and Nethinims.
Nambete na Levi wat kir na batin tutan.
And what we understand
Kakanda kilamay kina.
is that those three groups
Ito na tolo na kumukumongo.
have to follow the same pattern
And doon merto muria na tubutuba ko sa vartikibo.
or have to follow the same principle of scalability.
Senalawan ni kena bakato patakipap.
So if this was the line of the 144,000,
Kaya pagkaroon lady ni Doran rawas ng kabanon dolo.
as we teach it,
Kanta makataw ni tiko.
this would be 1989,
Ayan, natin ka diya wala sa bulka diwa.
and this would be the second advent.
Ayan, bless yung makaruamay.
Then the priests, Levites, and Nethinims would fit into this history.
Karto na tolo tama kumkumongo eto na Belutuki and Tambagonongo.
And each one of these lines would have to follow the identical pattern.
Karto na Tambakumongo and Dondon Merton Muriana Natubutuba for Santimairaki.
Now, when you start looking in detail
In the Renabakatito Sarongo
at a reform line,
and a Bukuni relating Tubutuba
even a very basic one,
and a Vika Kilelevu,
what we discover
Kakanda Reva,
is from the time of the end
Nibakta Tinona,
to the empowerment,
Kinabaka Kokwataki,
there are two waymarks.
Ruana Nawema.
The first one
Matay,
is the increase of knowledge.
Koyana, Kinabakalimtaki na Buku.
The second one is the formalization.
Kenekaruana Kinabakatonde Taki,
We've taught this for many years.
Kasadokta Wilfred Maxout.
If we were in the Millerite history,
And the Tico and Anwana Millerites,
it should be 1798,
and the Vitus Mabulu,
1818,
Tinkawalu,
1831, and 1840.
Tinkawalu, Toso Tandua, Tinkawalu, Wasabul.
Most-
Millerites.
Most of us should be familiar with these dates and this pattern.
Lebu kami kanda, and the club Nakatiko na Tubutubango.
Sometimes we draw it this way.
So Nangona and the Rita Kawakango,
We do it as a gradient.
and the Reda Nibakai Lake,
Now, what we have been teaching for some time now
Kasonakain na Kasabak the Witik, Tiko Weekend and being on Sawat in Munongo,
if you have a line,
Katiko no Lani,
there are two things you cannot have on that line.
Yanaka and Tiko Ra and Aleniongo, Ranitiko and Aleniongo.
One, you cannot have typology.
Matay in a Senanin Rani, Chiguna typology.
And the second,
Kanakarua,
you cannot have repeat and enlarge.
Sinin Rani, Tiko na Makasama ni Makatokurua Tak Tak.
So if you have a single line,
Yung kain doang nga na Lani,
the beginning and the end,
may nabakatikibo, kinabakatati o ati.
all you can have on that line is progression, nothing else.
Kangay ko na rin na Lani sa ikuan na kaya na Toso.
But
Satan doon na ka.
our lines are complex.
Anong dalay ni Elay ni baka Renre,
In this one line,
nandun na lang yung go,
you can see you've got three separate lines tucked into that history.
dareda ni tolot ko na lay ni so kumuntik ko na lay ni lewong go.
And each one of them
Ka birat mabitama kindo meron na lay yung go.
has to follow this same pattern.
Nandun na meron na murian na tubo-tuba. Kwa baka raitik may benalay ni lew.
So you'd have plough, informer, rain, etc. all for each one.
Kana dareda ni na murian pa na tubo-tuba pa sa ko na lay ni lew.
So you can see there's the repeating patterns here.
Kana dareda ni baka tutubag tektik nga may.
Now, if we were to look at this story here,
Kana dareda na tao nong go.
this was the line or the history of Christ.
Gona lay ni Jisu.
And this is the history
Gona nonangona
that we're living in.
enda sa ating kinonggo.
It's one line of history.
Kandua na lay ni Nona.
No repeat and enlarge, no typology.
Esega na
Now you know, hopefully, that we can look at this in another way. We can get this history and we can cut it up. So if we were to cut it, we could find one history here and another one here. This would be the history of Christ and of the 144,000. And having cut it, how many lines do we now have? 2 lines. Now with 2 lines, you can do repeat and enlarge and you can do typology. So we need to be able to understand that we can have a line of history where it's no to both of these, get the same history and cut it. When you do that, from one line you create 2. And then you can have typology and repeat and enlarge. So I'm asking the brother who asked the question, does that make sense? Do you agree with that? Say amen if you agree or understand. All good? Okay. So we're going to take that concept and we're going to make one more step forward. This is the line of Christ. And it begins where? What's this waymark? Not the date. Time of the end. And what's this waymark? So now I'm going to do this. What's this waymark? Then I'm going to do this and this. What waymark is this? How many lines are here? You can't have 2 time of the ends on one line. So what waymark is this? It's not the cross. It's in our history here. It's that same one. What is that? So you're given the date for it, but it doesn't have a name until you figure out what this line is teaching. Then you might give it a name. You might call it midnight, depending on how you understand. But it's certainly not this waymark. The date is the same, but the waymark is not. So, to my brother who asked the question, does that make sense? If you have a line, you can only have 1 time at the end. If you cut the line, like we've done here, you can have 2 time at the ends. Does that make sense? Yes? Good. So, if that makes sense to you, we'll go to this history here. This is the time of the end. We'll call this 9/11. And we'll call it the empowerment of the first angel. What do we have here? Increase of knowledge. Formalization. There are 2 waymarks here. Now when we draw this line, the way we normally do it, is we just have the increase of knowledge and the formalization at the beginning. If this was the Millerite history, this would be the arrival of the second, and then we'd have the midnight cry, and the close of probation. That's how we would normally draw that, because it's one line. On our line here, it's one line. So how many increases of knowledge will you have? Just one, because it's one line. One increase of knowledge for one line. How many times at the ends? Good, so we're getting how it works. Now what we're going to do is cut this line. Now how many lines do we have? If you have 4 lines, how many times at the ends do you have? So 9/11 is the time of the end. Each one of these is time of the end. So what will you have here? So when you start cutting lines, you can have repeat and enlarge, and it's all fine to do that. Now what we've discovered, not when we look at this line, but when we look at the line of the priest, because it works the same way. What waymark is this one? What waymark is this one? How many lines do you have? What is that waymark? We don't know. It's not the formalization, it's not the increase of knowledge, because you can only have one of them for one line. I didn't cut the line. Don't get deceived. You have to be careful. If we cut the line, then we can give it a name. If we don't cut the line, then we can't give it a name. It just becomes a progressive event. Say amen if you do not understand what I just said. If you don't understand. Okay, so about one person didn't understand. So we'll move on. So what we want to do is take this history, bring it down to the line of the priest. This would be 1989. We mentioned Raphia and Panium. There they are. And I'll extend this line a little bit. And this is verse 41. The Sunday law. Now what we've found is that these formalizations have a certain property to them, and we can give them a different name. So the name that we can give them is the loud cry. So we can have 4 loud cries if we cut that line. And each cry is for each history. Because we've got 4 histories, 4 dispensations, 4 cries. And the property of those cries is that they're connected to the subject of time.
ena makasama ni ngauna.
So we're currently
Ka ena ngonong go
in this one here.
ena lainong go na utiyo ni bakta ni tambangona.
This dispensation
Malio ni Rafia bat ni Kenya
here.
go.
Now if we go back,
Kada rescue muri
what we found
kada reida
is that in the history just before,
ena ngona sengay bera na Rafia
that loud cry
bakad magando melego go
gave us the time for Raphia.
esule na ngona ena Rafia.
And in the one before,
Kana kweta tiko imuri
that loud cry
na kalibando melego ya
gave us this date,
esule weekend na ngona ya.
which is the Sunday law
Say kwa na Sunday law
of 2014,
ena ronondol tinkaba
and that was 2019.
kawaya na ronondol tinkadiwa ena Rafia.
So we know
Kada kila
when you get a loud cry,
ni aba na kalibando melego
you're able to predict when the next event's going to happen.
around your baka predictaka nakana yago ena we baka tara.
Now, this is where it begins to become more complex,
Ka ngora tiktiki hun kena baka complex. Baka dendretai.
so I'm not going to go in that complex direction,
Kalau sini lako ena ngon sala ni kena baka dendretaki.
but what I want to say
Akau betu kuna
is we're now in a period
en satiko ena ngona
since 2018, this loud cry here, number 3,
ena lab cry number 3 ena ronong doro tinkawalu
that we can look a little bit further on,
ena reida baka lele kiliu
and we've actually understood
kana sakila
the date here
na tingini sino ikia
of Panium.
nyoya na penya.
We have the year, but we don't have the date.
Sa kila na ngona na embaki kasi ang hindi kila na tingini sino.
So we expect
Kanda dormi na namaka
when that loud cry happens,
na kadi ko ando mo ilevia
it'll give us information or more detail about the timing.
ena slebi kana na ngona ena buku ni penya.
But what we don't have
Kana kai sa bi kana kada sini kila
is this information.
sa ko ena be na tuku ena maliwa ni penya kina Sunday law.
So we don't have information from Panium to the Sunday law,
Sa bi kana tuku ena maliwa ki penya kina Sunday law.
but we expect there to be a increase of knowledge and a formalization. So we need to wait for those events before we can predict the date of the Sunday law. So if you want to study more on this subject, I would suggest you go to a series that was done in Tahiti. I think it was in May this year. And we discussed this issue in more detail. So the answer to your question is no, we don't know the date. We have the year of Panium. We don't have the date for that. But we're already beginning to understand that we will expect to know the date for the Sunday law.